Hello guys, this is a full guide on how to make a full stack React application. We're gonna use multiple technologies like React, Node.js, Docker, Postgres and Prisma. The app contains multiple features such as authentication, interaction between the users, dark and light mode and CRUD functionality. On the right side you can see a preview of the application. You can see how I logged in, I can see my stats, and in this particular account I'm a patient. You can see the graphs and all my information. Now before we start, let's dive deeper into the application. Of course, you can get the full scope of the application in the description below. In this video we're gonna extend our Prisma schema with the user relationship model. Now let's go to our schema.prisma and we're gonna create our model. First of all, we're gonna need an enum status with pending, accepted and rejected. And now we're gonna create the user relationship. We need an ID, created that and updated that property, the doctor. The doctor ID, patient, his ID too, we need to specify who sent the initial request, the ID, and the status. And we're gonna do default pending. Now let's add the user relationship model to the user. We need to specify the patient, the doctor, and the sender. Let's go to our API folder and let's run the migration. Let's open up the Prisma Studio, and here you can see all the models. Let's create a new doctor account and let's log in back to our main user. I'm gonna create a user relationship by hand. Let's fix a typo here. And go to the Prisma Studio and create the user relationship. We're gonna select the doctor, the patient, and we're gonna put the patient as the sender. And here you can see it works. Now let's create our API for the thing. Go to the services folder and create the request service folder. We need a post service, a delete service, a cancel service, an accept service, and a pending service. Let's import Prisma and let's create the service. we're gonna check our logged in user. We'll grab the doctor ID and the patient ID. I'm gonna use the same service both for the patient and the doctor, so we need to check the user role. Of course, for everything we do, we need to use a try-catch block. First of all, we're gonna check if we already sent the request. If we didn't send the request, we're gonna create a new user relationship item. The sender is the logged in user, the doctor is the doctor ID, and the patient is of course the logged in user. And we're gonna do the same if the sender is a doctor. In this case, the patient ID, we're gonna get it from the request object. Now we're gonna do the same for every service. We need to check the user role, so you will see me repeat the exact same code. Now in the accept service, the logged in user can accept the request, so you can think it like Facebook friends. The receiver must accept the request if he wants to access the data of the other user. In this case, the doctor can see the patient's data. To accept the request, we need the ID of the request and of course the doctor ID or the patient ID. Now in the cancel service, we are able to use it to cancel the request we sent to a particular user. So we need to check if the request is still pending. And of course, we need the ID of the user relationship. Now let's do the delete service, which is the exact same thing. Basically, with this service, we're able to decline the request and let the other user know. Now with the pending service, we're able to query for our requests. And finally, we need a search service. With this service, we're able to query for other users, so we can send them a request. If our user role is patient, we query for other doctors, and if we are doctor, we query only for patients. Now let's create our controller. Go to the controller folder and create the file. I'm gonna import all the services and we're gonna use them. Finally, we need to create the rule to call the appropriate controller. I'm gonna paste all our imports. Let's create our router. We're gonna use the required of middleware, and we're gonna create the routes. Finally, import them to our server file. Now we need a way to get back the connected users to our account, and we need a way to delete a particular user. So let's create two services, delete user and get users. Let's import Prisma. And let's create the service. All we do here is to query our user relationships. Of course, we're gonna use the same service both for the patient and the doctor, so we need to check again our user role. When the server sends users back, we need to delete sensitive information, like the password of the account. And finally, let's implement our delete user service. Now let's create the controller, import the services, and create the functions. And finally, import the controller to the router file. Let's create it, export it, and let's add it to our server.js file. Now we are done with the API. Let's go and create our pages for the front end. Go to the pages folder and create a requests page. Let's create the component. We need the index file and module.css styles file. Of course, we need to export default, and let's go and import the page to the app component. And we need to create the root. Here you can see we can access the page. Now before we build the page, let's create our mutations and queries. Of course, we're gonna create the custom hooks for all the queries and the mutations. I'm gonna paste most of them, but they are very similar. Here is the use search user hook. We need a hook for the pending requests, for cancelling the requests, for declining, for accepting, and for sending the requests. Now let's export them. And let's create a new file for the queries to get the trusted users. We need the mutation to get them and the mutation to delete one. Let's go back to our page. Here you can see all the queries. Let's import the use search user and the use get pending. And of course we need the use Schema hook from auth queries. Let's open up our Prisma Studio. And you can see here we have a pending request. Here I have some typos. Okay. And in the dev tools you can see the send request. Now I'm gonna change the sender. And you can see the request is now received instead. Let's go to our components folder. And we need to create a beautiful container to wrap our buttons. Let's do that. Let's create the component, the styles file and the index file. And I'm gonna paste most of the HTML and the styles. If you want to do the exact same thing, you can pause the video and copy the code. Or you can just download the code from the description below. Now let's import our container. And now we can start rendering the requests. If the pending requests are loading, we will show a spinner, and if we have the data, we can render the requests. Let's create a pending component. Let's import the required queries, and let's import the loading spinner and the button. Now create the component. We need two properties, the request and the type of the request. And here we can call our hooks. In this component, we're able to accept the request, cancel it, or decline it. We need this loading property in every hook to basically render a spinner when we are waiting for a response. If the type of the request is sent, we can cancel the request. If it's not, we can decline or accept it because a different user sent it to us. Now let's do some styling. And now we are able to render the request with our new component. Now we will create a form to query new users. Here you can see the request. Let's create one manually. There it is. And we can cancel it. Let's fix our color here. And everything is working. Let's create a button to refetch the requests. And let's start building a search container. Let's create a state for the input. And let's destructure the useSearchUser hook. And we're gonna need the debound search function to prevent spamming the API. Now let's do our HTML. And I'm gonna do a label and an input. Below that, we're gonna render the returned users. Now let's go and create the user component. In this component, we will be able to send a request, so we need the usePostRequest hook. Let's destructure it. And let's add the class names and build the HTML. Here we're gonna do a button and its function will depend on our role. Here you can see the example. And now let's do the styling. Here we have an error because we didn't import the user component. Let's do that. Now we're able to test the search user. We queried the doctor and we sent him a request. You can see it in the Prisma Studio. Let's accept it manually. And here if we require the same doctor, we don't see him because we accepted the request. Let's change the status back to pending. And we can cancel it and requery him. Finally, let's create a page for the trusted users. We need the component, the styles file in the index file. Let's import the page to our main component. And we will create the root. Here you can see the page, and let's start building it. We need our custom hooks, the use delete trusted user and the use get trusted users, and the use who am I hook. Let's import our spinner and our button too. And the container we built previously. Let's create a user component. And in this component we will be able to delete the user. Here you can see the users. Let's quickly accept the request. And if we refetch, we can see our doctor. Now let's map the users, and we are ready. And we will add a refetch button. Let's quickly add some styling. And here you can see the final page. Of course we can delete the doctor and requery him. Let's accept the request, and he's back.